David, since you're closest, we'll start with you. Hegseth, in that soundbite, lauding the war as a success. Can the U.S. claim mission accomplished?
So I've covered each press conference. So at the very first press conference Hegseth gave, he described 4 objectives for the war. I'm going to just quickly go through them. Number 1, destroy Iran's missile stockpile. The latest intelligence assessment is only about 30% of Iran's missiles have been destroyed. Number 2, destroy Iran's navy. They've taken out the surface ships. I think they have achieved that goal, but they didn't end the ability to project power, and that's shown by this amazing ability of Iran to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. They still control it. They started charging a toll. They might continue to control it. So number 2, not achieved. Number 3, permanently deny Iran nuclear weapons forever. Those were the secretary's words a month ago. Not achieved. There's still 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium inside Iran. That can't be used to immediately make a bomb, but it could be used in the future. And number 4, prevent Iran's proxies from destabilizing the Middle East. If anything, this ceasefire, I think, emboldens those proxies. The United States tried to topple the regime with just air power, couldn't do it, and it couldn't prevent Iran from seizing the control of the Strait of Hormuz. That shows the failure. The U.S. needs allies. They didn't have enough ships. NATO would have helped with that if they had approached this in a different way.
So Navy, to a degree, decimated,
yes.
Accomplished, but not what the Navy is capable of doing by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Points well taken there. So, Colonel, Secretary Hegseth was also asked about Iran's enriched uranium, of which Tehran has nearly 1,000 pounds, enriched to about 60%. Take a listen.
We know exactly what they have, and they know that, and they will either give it to us, which the president has laid out. They'll give it to us voluntarily. We'll get it. We'll take it out. Or if we have to do something else ourselves, like we did in Midnight Hammer or something like that, we reserve that opportunity.
Both scenarios there. How would that even work?
Well, I'm not an operational commander. I can tell you, though, that going into Iran to retrieve anything is going to require boots on the ground. And boots on the ground means troops, means soldiers, means Marines with air cover, amongst other things. And that's going to increase the odds, increase the risk that troops will be encountering Iranian military, Iranian insurgents, people they mistake for threats, and increases the chances of a U.S. military committing potential atrocities. In addition to just being darn difficult to do on the ground in a country the size of Iran, with the population of its size, with its military capability that's still there extant on the ground, despite what Secretary Hegseth seems to think. It's dangerous. It's going to be deadly. And it's uncertain. As with all things in conflict, nothing is certain. So any announcement by the administration that we're guaranteed success or guaranteed a victory in any respect is just foolhardy.
So, Ambassador, as we move to the Strait of Hormuz, Hegseth had this to say about it, sir. Take a listen.
Our military is watching. I'm sure their military is watching, but commerce will flow. And that's what you saw the markets react to, is that reality. As far as shooting that, we were monitoring it last night in real time. Of course we are. Iran would be wise to find a way to get the carrier pigeon to their troops out in remote locations to know not to shoot any longer.
So he's warning there that this ceasefire could be delicate. President Trump is expected to meet with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte later on today at the White House. But how do our allies view what has happened in the last 24 hours? We described it earlier as whiplash. And what do you expect from this meeting?
Well, I think everybody is, of course, delighted by the fact that the shooting has stopped in a war that they think was not only foolhardy and unnecessary, but also illegal. I think at the same time, they're equally worried that the consequences of this war are with them for the long term. And the most important consequence is all of the things that were not accomplished. And I think David laid out very nicely the 4 reasons why we were supposedly go to war. The other way to put it is, what was the world like on the 28th of February, and how is it better now? On the 28th of February, the Strait of Hormuz was open. Traffic was going through it. Now the Iranians are going to be controlling who gets access to it and get paid for it in return. Before February 28, there was 500 kilograms or so of highly enriched uranium deep underground. It's still underground, and nothing has changed. Before the 28th of February, Iran had a large ballistic missile capability that has been degraded, but certainly not eliminated. And finally, the Navy may have been shattered, but it was the wrong Navy we went after. That combat Navy really was never very important, and it isn't important to keep the straits open. So when the Allies look at the United States having gone to war, they say, to what end and for what purpose? Why did you shoot all these weapons when you didn't achieve anything, and in fact created a major rift with allies in Europe, gave Russia a reason to get more money by selling oil, and redeploying major forces from the Indo-Pacific, who are no longer a worry for China. You didn't get anything out of it. If anything, we all are weaker as a result of this, including us, who are suffering economically. And I think that's part of the way they're going to be looking at it. And it's deeply unfortunate.
I appreciate that you and David are echoing the same sentiments and facts here. As I move to you, Jackie, the president is posting some new developments this morning. So what are we learning?
Yeah, Alex, well, the big question mark here is exactly the question mark that existed and was the impetus for why the U.S. got into this war to begin with, which is the fate of Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities, their ability to build a nuclear weapon. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning a new development that the United States, and I'll read it quickly, was working closely with Iran, which we have determined has gone through what will be a very productive regime change. He states that there will be no enrichment of uranium and that the U.S. will work with Iran to dig up and remove all of the deeply buried nuclear dust. He also says that there are going to be discussions about tariffs and sanctions relief with Iran, and that many of the 15 points have already been agreed to. It's unclear what exactly those 15 points still are. They have been in circulation for a while, but the actual contours of the 15 points are unclear. Iran, however, Alex, did post on social media that 10-point plan, which appears to be in direct contradiction with what Trump and Secretary Hegseth are now claiming in terms of their prerequisites for there to be a successful negotiation here, with Hegseth saying, as you just played, that actually there were still potential plans to have the U.S. military carry out a very complicated military operation to obtain the uranium and the nuclear enrichment capabilities themselves. There's also this issue of the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, Iran has said that while negotiations are ongoing, they are going to act in good faith and keep the strait open. And this morning, according to some manufacturers and shipping companies, that appears to be the case. But the conditions around how the strait will remain open and whether or not it's going to remain in Iranian control in adherence with what Iranian is demanding in this 10-point plan is also still very much up for debate. This has been a big point of leverage for the Iranians. They're now demanding reparations for war damages. They also were saying yesterday that they wanted to charge countries essentially what amounts to a toll fee to go through the strait. So these are huge, pretty existential questions that have long confounded Iran and the U.S. that still exist. However, the U.S. is now at least on a path to trying to hash this out on Friday with negotiations continuing in Islamabad.
All right, so let me pick up on the nuclear enrichment issue with you here, David. And here's the quote. The United States will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all of the deeply buried B-2 bombers' nuclear dust. We are and will be talking tariff and sanctions relief with Iran. Pete Hegseth did not confirm any details of this and how it would be executed. Are there any plans in the works?
This is the core problem. This is maybe why the U.S. went to war. And the Iranians are saying the opposite. The Iranians are saying that the agreement includes their ability to enrich uranium. And then the claim that by Hegseth that we're just going to go in and get this uranium. There was a great Washington Post story. It would take hours. They have to dig it out of the ground. I mean, the United States would have to build a makeshift airstrip to remove this uranium, and Iranian forces aren't just going to sit back and let this happen.
Wait, is that why Hegseth said, hey, they may just offer it to us? He's saying they're just going to give it to us.
They're not going to offer it to us. And again, the simple, broader lessons of this war, American air power alone will not defeat a military. That's never happened in history. It didn't happen here. And we need allies. We could not control the Strait of Hormuz because we didn't have NATO ships. And so the way this was conducted by the Trump administration didn't work on those two levels.
So, Ambassador, Pakistan's prime minister confirmed that Iran will partake in peace talks. It'll happen Friday. It's not clear who could attend on the U.S. side. Of course, we've seen several rounds of negotiations already. So what needs to happen to make this round different?
Well, let's hope that they actually sit down and to go and figure out a way to bridge the differences that clearly exist between the United States, including the statements that the president is making through Truth Social, and the Iranians. And this is not going to be easy. Remember, there were real discussions about the nuclear weapons about the nuclear program in February in Geneva, and those were cut short by the decision of President Trump to start bombing. And so the Iranians are a little worried that they can't trust the president and his interlocutors. It is also the case very clearly that the Iranians were far more forward-leaning to resolving this nuclear issue than the United States, and particularly Steve Witkoff, seems to have understood. And as a result, we actually are foreclosing, perhaps, a way to get after this nuclear issue that we could have done through diplomacy. So I'm worried that this war has put us back on the nuclear issue. I don't see the Iranians agreeing to hand it over. It's a major piece of leverage that they have, and I'm worried that the negotiations are not going to resolve this issue. And at the same time, I do think that the president, by declaring victory, is signaling that he's willing to settle for almost anything in order to let this war go past and start focusing again on what he needs to focus on, which is the domestic political issues that he faces.